How's it going, everybody? Of course, you know me, AAron Capouellez, back here for another podcast episode, joined by Amelia, and we have our special guest, Dan. But you probably don't know him by Dan unless you really dive into it. He's Amphibicast. Really excited to have him be a part of this and to be our special guest today. So, we're going to dive into conservation and pet care. These are two topics that you can watch or I guess listen to the Amphibicast podcast because he's only audio, but I think he should consider video because this guy is really a dynamic speaker. He uses his facial expressions to really captivate the audience. And by the audience, I mean Amelia and I. We were just sitting here and all just listening to him. So I think we're going to have a really good show today. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what your opinions are on a lot of these different things. So, Dan, go ahead and just open us up. Just let everybody know who you are, what you're doing, and some interesting stuff about yourself.
Okay. Well, first, I want to thank Aaron for taking the time to let me come on his podcast. I appreciate that. We had done a brief collaboration or two in the past, and it's always a pleasure talking to you. Amelia, it's really nice to meet you. I'm glad that we got a little chance to talk before we started recording. And I'm going to apologize, guys. My dog is like sleeping here like on the floor next to me. So if he starts snoring, I swear to God, it's not me. so, yeah, who am I? Okay. I go my professional name. I go by as Dan Julius. I host a podcast called Amphibicast, which focuses on a special focus on dendrobatids, but we do cover amphibian issues in general, everything from conservation, research, science, obviously captive care because it's essentially a hobby podcast. So
Oh, it's all right.
This dog, man, this dog.
That's all right.
I mean, if you guys ever own like any kind of bull breed, like when they fall asleep, they just start snoring. Sorry. So yeah, I started the podcast back in 2020, July 2020, and as of now, up to about 132 episodes or something like that. And I've been fortunate to have guests of all different walks of life. I've had zookeepers, I've had conservationists, I've had research scientists, I've had breeders, I've had hobbyists, I just did an artist series with people who do pencil art, color pencil art, people who build custom Liberian backgrounds, all that stuff. And that's basically it. There's a lot of interesting people out there with a lot to say, and the frog world and amphibian world in general is not huge, but it's big enough that it's nice to be able to get a diverse group of people on this show to talk about issues that concern the animals that I really, really enjoy, and I know many of my listeners do as well.
Yeah, and you gotta fill us in on what is it, IMDb? Aren't you on there now?
Yeah, funny things happen, I guess. I sometimes randomly just to check on what the podcast is up to, I'll just Google the name or I'll do like a DuckDuckGo and just find out, different search engines. And somehow it showed up with it was IMDb, and I looked at it and there was one for every episode. I'm wondering like who did this because it wasn't me. So I guess that's an achievement, but I mean, I don't know. I didn't even know they did podcasts, but I guess it was cool to see it on there.
I think
Do you have
that's
like
great.
ratings on there and stuff?
No ratings. So if anybody goes on there and wants to leave a nice rating, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, we gotta get on there and inflate them, all fives, right? Is it tens? Are there fives or tens? I think it's five.
I think it's five. I'm not usually. I think most stuff is 5-star. The only problem is you'd have to go through like every single episode. And at first I thought it was for the whole series, and then I looked more closely. And I'm like, I don't have time. Even if I wanted to like bump it myself as a shameless act, I still wouldn't have time. But yeah, it's the show does well, and I'm grateful to the people that supported me. I'm grateful to people who've influenced me, and I'm grateful to everyone who took time to be on the show. Like, look, at the end of the day, I'm just a regular guy. I'm no one special. I have an interest in these animals, and I like to share my interest with others, and I like to hear their insights. And it's done well. It's had a good reception, and I have goals for it to continue into the future. And that's about it with regards to the show.
Okay, let me just do something out in left field. This is not anything that we talked about in the pregame for this.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get to do this last time, but we're going to play a game again, Amelia.
Oh boy.
But this will be a good one because with him explaining about being a hobbyist and different things like that, I'm gonna bring a game back. This will be the first time we've ever had a round two, but I really want to hear what your opinion is on this, Dan. So we're gonna play the build your terrarium game or build your ecosystem game. So if you guys had seen that last time, DJ and Amelia both had explained, and I think Amelia, you chose the African bullfrog, and DJ chose, like, was it the pancake tortoise? And I actually
I think,
chose,
yeah.
yeah, and I chose the project that I'm actually working on. Well, sort of. I need to be careful how I say that, because if I explain like I'm building a warehouse to store a woodland ecosystem, my parents will probably kick me out. Yeah, so Dan, here's how it'll work. So you got to think of maybe a species or two that you want to be the exhibit animal, and you have to pick a really large setting. So it could be a warehouse, a greenhouse, it could be the largest aquarium ever. It has to be big though. You have to tell us the square footage. Um, and you can make it however you want. If you want to breed the animals, explain that. If you just want it to be an exhibit just to show the animals off, you can do that. It could be any herp in the world, but we're going to limit it to herps as the exhibit animal. You can highlight plants too, but just explain to me, I guess, what your dream situation would be in creating the ultimate Dan ecosystem.
The first animal that actually comes to mind is a hippo, but I know that's not a herp, so we can't use that.
El Chapo style.
Yeah, you know what's up. Yeah, yeah, invasive hippos
Dan, we could probably make that happen if we go down and bag one. I mean, if you can get it up here, you probably could keep it.
Yeah, that would be wild. I always use that analogy. It's like, animals not to keep. A hippo was probably the worst one.
Well, what state do you live in, Dan? If it's like Texas or something, maybe.
I live in New York, in case you couldn't guess
Okay.
by my accent, which
He'll just
people
keep it in
know.
the
What I was
bathroom.
thinking.
I actually my regular speaking voice is a little bit more intense than my radio voice. So if I sound different on the air, I actually try to rein it in so I don't, but I mean, well, New York's a little strict with its legislation, so I don't think I could get away with a hippo. All right, so any herp? That's a good question. Most of the stuff that I keep is actually relatively small, so I feel like if I'm gonna commit to a large space, I'd have to go with something that would be fairly large. Good question. All right, let's see. So why don't we start with an average size room? We'll say, let's just say 10 feet by 10 feet. Okay, let's something that's realistic that could be in someone's home. What I would really like to see would be a really cool, I'd like to do like a riparian scene that was something that was riverside. I like moving water, and I realize that would kind of be hard to capture in really any environment, but I'd like to do something with like I guess like a riverbank, with clay that had been kind of like cut away, like maybe some mangrove stuff like that. I like riverside environments. So yeah, anything with like a distinct riverside grass, maybe some aquatic vegetation, maybe a little bit current, and I guess what I'd like to do would be maybe have that occupy like half the wall, so you'd have a certain amount of space to kind of sit back and enjoy it. Maybe like a nice couch or something. And I guess if we're doing riverside, I think what might be really cool would be actually, yeah, what would be cool honestly would be a riverside Adelopus tank, something with,
That's exactly where I thought you
yeah,
were going with this. You said
something,
Riverside.
yeah, something that would really capture how they live in the wild. And like with Adelopus, like if you've seen footage, or if you've been lucky enough to see wild Adelopus, they live in these areas that are just so cool, and they live within a certain distance from the water, and it's a certain temperature. I think that would be really cool to watch that. And obviously, since they're not a huge species, I think that would be a reasonable size, would be, like 10 foot by 10 foot room, say, with like maybe something several hundred gallons. And I don't think I would stick anything else in there. I mean, it'd be cool to have some fish, but I don't know if that would that would jive well. But yeah, I think one of the Atelopus species, and I mean, I'm kind of defaulting to frog. I mean, if I wanted to go with something really, really big that was not necessarily like super elaborate, I'd like to give one of my blood pythons a nice room, maybe the room next door, like 10 foot by 10 foot, and just set up maybe model it on like a like a palm forest, because I know they like to hang out by palm plantations. So like lots of like fallen logs, lots of debris, lots of leaf litter, palm fronds and whatnot, and maybe a nice rock wall, to give it some nice like perspective. But they're kind of just like sit and wait. So you're not. I don't know if you're necessarily going to see them, because I'm looking at mine right now, and all she does is hide. But it would be nice when they do come out. So I'd have to say that would be two things that I would, realistically see as being like pretty cool builds. I feel like I could have a lot of fun with that. The hippo can stay outside.
So yeah, like last time I talked about how I think it would be really neat for like a zoo or aquarium or something to have like a really large scale, neat African bullfrog exhibit that they can kind of do their full gamut of natural behaviors and really show them off as more than just big lumps of frog that kind of sit there, because they are big and impressive, and so like do them justice. But for a part two, so I guess kind of going back to frogs, but you could do something similar with like a snake species. Um, so something that we've managed to only breed once at Josh's is the black-webbed flying frog, Rhacopherus rhinewortii. And they're cool frogs, but I kind of look at them and I think like sort of, I guess, what's the point of having these as a private keeper? Because it's going to be hard to provide them enough space to really get to have them do those big gliding leaps from like tree to tree, tree to the floor, stuff like that. So having some kind of like a zoo space or whatever that was really large to have those gliding frogs in and actually allow them to do that gliding would be really fascinating and something that'd be really uncommon to be able to see. Now there's, like I said, there's like other snakes and stuff that do that same kind of behavior where they jump down and then they spread out and create more surface area to glide around on. That you could do a similar concept. I don't know that you could cohab them because I feel like the snakes would eat the frogs, but that would be something that would be really interesting to see and could go really crazy with the vegetation probably, because you'd be having enough space for basically like, if not real, then like artificial tree builds to give them that structure and stuff. Probably wouldn't see them a lot during the daytime since they're nocturnal, so you'd want to make it a really attractive space. But then I guess to be able to actually have people observe this, you'd either have to have some sort of series of really high quality like night vision cameras to be able to just like record the activity, or I don't know if you'd be able to maybe do something else with like swapping around their day and night cycles so they're more active during the daytime and just try and provide enough light that people can observe. Maybe have like a 2-part tank where it's like you like rotate them maybe or something. You've got like some individuals that are out in regular light during the daytime so people can see like this is what color the frog is and whatnot. If the color was kind of distorted in the actual exhibit, I don't know. I suppose if you were to talk to somebody who works in any kind of like nocturnal house with like bats and sloths and stuff at a zoo, they could probably come up with better ideas on how to really exhibit a species that's a lot more active at night. I don't have a lot of experience with that other than like, my tree frogs at home, but for a zoo purposes, you'd want to have that be more accessible to people.
So okay, that's a really good one. I didn't even know you guys had them and that you guys had bred them. That's
I
really
think
cool.
it was probably, it would have been before you were there, I think. We've just got the one large female who's the mother of the group left. Unfortunately, the male passed away recently, who fathered the clutch. And then we've got a bunch of holdbacks that maybe at some point we'll get to do something with them. they're really interesting because the holdbacks are actually a very different color from their parents. And like we've heard theories that it's something like, wild caught frogs and their captive bred counterparts. Sometimes you'll see some kind of a color change where like the captive bred ones are just never quite as vibrant. But these ones, like the wild caught individuals, are like a green color, kind of like a White's tree frog kind of color as their base. And these pretty large juveniles, unless they suddenly decide to undergo like this radical color shift, they're actually like a sky blue with like a little bit of modeling. They almost look like ceramic, and I actually think it's a way more attractive color scheme personally. But it's really interesting how that works.
Yeah. Well, that's I think that's crazy. That would be insane to, just imagine that. Like I just imagine you'd see like dappled lighting and you just would look up and you'd see like some type of vegetation moving, and then you'd literally just see a frog just gliding down. Like that'd be nuts.
Mm-hmm.
That would be really nuts. Yeah, I think that'd be really cool.